Yo, what's happening, audience? I'm back drinking mate and talking about weird stuff. And you're not gonna believe, maybe you will, what sometimes we use many words for one meaning, and you're not gonna believe what two words mean the same thing. I know what that is. Love and death is the same thing. Um, and I can metaphysically prove it that is so, and physically too, actually, because there are stellar objects that can display this phenomena. And so, yeah, the true love is a form of dying. And the closer to it you live, the more of uh, the more of dying you experience. It's not physical dying, but it's a, you can call it emotional dying. But there is this alchemical process that happens, like all the negative emotions are dissipating and turning into something that's positive. This alchemical process. That's actually two sides of the same coin. One is death, another one is life. And that is what love is. Void, when people call void, the nothingness, that's what love is, because it's dissolving everything. But it's not separate. The void is not separate from light. It's also, every time it dissolves something, it projects something new. You see, this is why, like, this eye, it functions like an eye. And you know what? Let me just give you an example. Okay, this is like my new theory that I believe physicists are gonna catch up, uh, if they haven't already. First of all, everything is holographic, so physics has to be based on informatics and holography. And the second thing, the dark matter and dark energy is bullshit, because it's just made up to fudge the data. Why am I saying all this? Because there's one phenomena in stellar objects, which I talked about in previous video, which can be equated with what I call like a philosopher's stone, that has organizing. It has an organizing principle, and that is neutron star. Now, neutron stars are not visible with the naked eye, but they're there. I also postulate that at each center of the galaxy there is a massive black hole and a massive neutron star. That is an organizing principle that keeps everything together. It has the capacity to repel what's needed to repel and pull what's needed to be pulled. It has, electromagnetic capacities that has its own intelligence. And neutron stars are being formed after the star is dying, and sometimes it forms a neutron star or sometimes forms a black hole. And I think there is no neutron star without black hole. And perhaps it's the opposite is true, but don't quote me on this. Perhaps there are just um uh, anyway. I don't know if you experienced this, but whenever I'm referring to the 0 point and asking these weird questions, so the mind stops and you kind of fall through the cracks and you experience everything directly. When that happens, all this discomfort, this uncomfortable feelings, turns to heat. At least that's how it feels like to me. And it feels like that black hole sun kind of thing. There are pictures of black holes, and then there's this like red glow all around. which uh, shows like you can call it a Hawkins radiation. It's a residual heat from destroying all the matter. And so what is being destroyed is what you can call ego as being dissolved. It's that heat that dissipates from your state of 0 point is you are dissolving the ego in that point. And it feels everything's like super still and peaceful. And there's that heat, that super silent heat. I don't know if you experienced that, but if you experience that, that's it. And it's not induced through self hypnosis or intention or anything like that. It just happens. This is why how you know that it's not induced and you're not hallucinating it, because you can hallucinate the um, you see what I'm trying to say. You can hallucinate things through self suggestibility, I suppose. These are not real things, and this is why there is this hallucinatory enlightenment, if you know, and then there's the real one, and the real one is not flashy, you know. Um, it's not visible, just like that neutron star. And so I'm equating neutron star as the philosopher's stone. And what does it do? It takes the matter that is done, an old matter, dissolves, and then projects the new one. Okay? So it's like a processing unit, if you want to use the computer analogy, that takes the data that is corrupt and projects the data that is correct. Okay? And and I assume that, you know, if you're watching my channel, I assume that you are into this idea of emotional alchemy and, you know, and all stuff. And then what happens after? By the way, in alchemy, this process called Nigredo, and this Nigredo happens only when you are in that 0 point, while there is this emotional discomfort. Every time you have like emotional discomfort, you can move to that stillness, and then the emotional discomfort becomes sort of like a heat dissipating. That's Nigredo stage. Um, then there's this Albedo stage. Nigredo is like blackening, basically you're burning it all up. Then Albedo stage is okay. So let me say this: the void, right, is like a black hole. That's the void, and that represents death or love. Then you have the white light, and that represents life or light. Okay, and when you unfold the void from the light, poof, you create rainbow colors in between, and there's three metallic colors in between, and so you get seven rainbow colors, one void, uh, one white, right? Now you have nine, and there's three that is basically the spectrum. Like, you know, there's a redshift at the bottom. This is why, like, you can call it a copper. Then at the center there is this complete balance between the redshift and blue shift. Then you get gold, and then the blue shift is silver. Okay, so there's these three metallic colors to give you a perspective of what I'm talking about, because those 12 things are individual states of consciousness. When you unfold consciousness, it becomes this poof, this bubble, which is obviously everything based from 2D. It projects itself into this rainbow and metallic colors. Anyway, to make a long story short, as you can see, there's this void that it's there, and the void is a state of stillness. I know some people say like it's not a state; it's a background of the states, whatever you want to call it. it is, I don't know, state. I mean, like a background of states. It doesn't matter really. You don't want to get confused. To me, it's just like, yes, it is a background of everything because it's silent. It's not doing anything except eating the your ego, not necessarily your ego or the ego. Distortions like the matter that's supposed not supposed to be in your soul, right? And that is actually love. Love destroys these boundaries that are incorrect. And so this is why, like, when you are connecting with another person, and you know love cannot happen unless the ego structures are kind of dissolving, and then the connection happens because ego structures are dissolving. This is why, like, if people are not willing to let go of their egos, and they're not willing to um, zero that out and whatever, then there's the conflict based relationship. Some people call it karmic. But when two people are willing to live in the right direction, then there's actually real love that happens, and there's a boundary dissolution between those two people, and there is this connection, which is like a this process that I've described is an act of lovemaking. Because if you look at the galaxy and the way everything is structured, you'll see that the galaxy is a lovemaking act, because it's taking the matter that it's corrupt, right? Destroying the boundaries that are incorrect, okay, through love and boundary dissolution, surrender, and then Albedo producing the white light, right? And that you can call it orgone, which is obviously related to the word orgasm. And so that is the energy that is organizing principle. It's organizing everything back into how it's supposed to be, using the corrupt matter to produce that light. Okay, and from that light, then there's uh, you know projection to a new form, and then that comes into different matter, which is more um, correct, I suppose, more organized than it was before. So there's this perpetual renewal that's going on, and perpetual rejuvenation. Okay, this is why when people are living from the ego states, they tend to have a lot of cortisol and tend to degenerate real quick because there's no regeneration process. But people who tend to be in love or in a state of love, um, they tend to, first of all, be closer to that bliss energy, and have everything in their, not only their bodies get organized, but also in life. Okay, so albedo, the whitening, right? That comes when the light comes out, right? Because when a matter is consumed, the projection happens, that orgone energy, right? And in a stellar objects, you may equate that to gamma ray bursts. By the way, a little coinkydink that the gamma states in your consciousness are usually associated with these blissful and ecstatic and orgasmic states. You see? So, what's not visible, if you Google images of galaxy, you'll see that um, if you look at these more like precise images, not just like a pictures, but like you'll see that there's spirals. You'll see there's just like a spiraling back into the center, right? And what you can see there is the axis, which is the gamma rays. This is what neutrons start. That obviously, this is just my theory. That physicists are not saying that they're, well, at least most physicists that I know, I'm not saying that there is a neutron star in the center of the galaxy, but I'm saying that. And it produces this axis around which all the matter is turning around, getting dissolved, and being spit out as that light energy, as the gamma ray burst. And I also have to say that those gamma ray bursts that are being spit out, it's just like in a torus field, it's producing new matter. That's also my theory, because galaxy is like an eyeball. Gamma ray burst producing new matter. Okay, and that new matter is more organized. And I also um, propose that galaxies and universe is infinite, meaning that this process never ends. Um, it's like a perpetually self-organizing process, right? It always gets more organized, more organized, more organized, more organized, more organized. It starts love, just like in the last video I said, we all start like really disorganized, and we play this game of life to get more and more organized, and that's the game. And I think that's what the galaxies are doing the exact same way. It's eating the matter and producing more organized through the gamma rays, producing new matter that is more organized. Okay, fresh matter, and that probably that matter, maybe it's not ideal. It needs to be processed again, process, and you keep on processing, and that's pretty much like would be the life cycle until there is a complete perfection in the galaxy. And what happens after that, I don't know. But because it's infinite, I suppose something happens that resets, and the matter is, presumably the matter is being produced. Um, Anyway, I shouldn't postulate because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I know this, that Kyle's mom is a big fat bitch. No, no. Don't worry about it. None of my videos are monetized, so I can swear. I'm free. I don't have to use these made up fucking words, like instead of fucking, people say bucking right now. What a fucking lame ass way of expressing yourself. So censored. Some people say, instead of sexual, they say smexual. What the fuck is that all about? You know what I'm saying? Just say it. Fucking lose the coins, but be yourself. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, got a little distracted here. All right. So that's the Galaxy Wars. You can learn everything about um, yourself by observing physics, but the right physics. And you are also the galaxy, I assume. And there's many galaxies in the universe, right? And so, but has they all have a relationship. Of course, everything is connected. Just gravitational pulls and everything's connected. So when one person is engaging in this natural way, which is like natural, like galaxy does that all the time, nature does that all the time, but somehow the so-called free will of this game, of this planet, allows this deterrence of this continuous dissolution of these egoic structures, because they are constantly um, dissolving and projecting something new and better. That's a natural process. So we always are like dissolving the egoic structures naturally, if we allow ourselves to do so. Okay. um and because, like I said, it's an act of lovemaking, you produce the blissful state. So you're not afraid of ego anymore. it's a fuel. It's a fuel to produce light, which you use to manifest. So the secret is that um, instead of like avoiding people who are toxic or whatever, um, I mean, look, like I'm not saying right that look that some people, I shouldn't say that because I should rephrase that because look, there are such things as unrepairable and unrepenting souls. They do exist, and they basically double down all the way. They'd rather cease to exist, which is a type of form of soul dissolution. It rarely happens, but it does happen. The soul is so stubborn on the ego so much that there's nothing there but the ego, and so they really the level of consciousness that is there, that is natural, is like it can be equated to the stone. So in all these stories that people turn to stone, all these and stuff like that. That's what it means. It's basically some people are so ego based that they regress so much they turn into this heart of coal, and they don't want to go on this process. But then the universe takes the reign and eventually balances it all out. So that's why they it's the most retarded, most idiotic way of approaching existence, but it does exist, which means that there are some souls that are you cannot negotiate with them, that they will not repent and they will not surrender, and they do exist, and they basically will self-destruct. That's what's going to happen to them, but you can't convert them. So that's why I'm saying that there's um, not all, some toxic people you can't do anything about. Okay, but um the darkness, right? We all have like this dark side, so to speak, that is to actually be used up and converted into something positive. um anyway, the moral of the story, what I'm trying to say is that if you are I mean, if you're a real deal alchemist and you live life in this direction, and I know that, I don't know, like I don't meet a lot of people. I know a few of my friends who live life like that and have what it takes to do this. But others I see, they just like pacify themselves, like even through the meditation. They want, um, they don't want to face those things. They meditate so they don't have to meditate, so they don't have to face these things. They just want to give it to somebody. But that's not a bad news. You can take that and say, well, I know what to do with shit. I grow flowers in it. And so that's what you do. And basically, you learn to alchemize this particular type of negative emotion, and the next time it comes up, it's almost automatic. You don't, it's almost like that negative emotion comes in and the light comes out, right? And you got to, like I said, 144 in previous series, 144 of these alchemical processes until each gem is perfected, and then when the shit comes at you, automatically it just lights you up. Okay, and then you start acting like a neutron star, and you know exactly what to do with that matter. Okay, so that's that's the physics analogy to this internal process. um and yeah, I don't know what to tell you guys. This is like it's one big bang, you know what I'm saying? Literally a galaxy, as far as I'm concerned. You is a love making act. So anyway, to finish this, albedo, the whitening stage, is that after you feel that negative emotion kind of dissipating and some heat arises, after some time, you can feel a certain glow that feels kind of ecstatic. It may be different, like I said, there's all sorts of colors, but whatever that may be, whatever you've alchemized, there might be like a feeling of this green ray love coming around, and they all have the same quality of, um, I would call, like, they all have the same quality of ecstatic, you know some people call it smexual. No, it's not really, uh, kind of, how to explain this. I mean, you got to experience for yourself, but the way I see it is that all of these rays has this quality of, um, ec- ecstasy, I suppose, but they're all different colors and different types of ecstatic states. Okay, let's just call it that. All right. um so that starts coming as a albedo state, right? That white light, the whitening. And to equate this, again, through physics and through observation, it's like when you heat up the coal and apply so much pressure and so much heat that the diamond comes out. And that's this whitening thing, this whitening albedo thing. Also, I have to say that philosopher's stone, sometimes called, it's a paradox. Just like a neutron stars with black holes is a paradox, because there's no, in this case, on my theory, there's no neutron star without black hole, and there's no black hole without neutron star. But in this particular case, so the neutron star, that nugget, is that ice, that stone, and that stone is unique. Why? It's because it has fire and ice in one, and this is why neutron star has both. Has fire because it has intense heat, and it has cold, absolute zero. One object has two capacities. It's cold and hot at the same time. Mm. And this is why physicists, I don't think they are comfortable with paradoxes, but they have to accept this paradox, at least one paradox, for everything else to be falling into place. So, and this is why a neutron star in the center of the galaxy, in your soul heart, your philosopher's stone, is beyond the mind, beyond the body. It is before any kind of form in your mind is created, any kind of matter, it comes to you. Okay. And and like I said before, we're all here to create these alchemical stones. I don't know what most people are doing here, but they don't seem they're even aware of this, and I wasn't aware of this. I was aware a little bit about this when I was going through like tough times in my life, and there were options to pacify it or to engage into some sort of, like, activity that it's, um, just coping with it. uh, I figured out that there is a way to kind of face it, and I wasn't aware of the 0 point or anything like that, but I was somehow was able to kind of take that negative emotion and somehow put it into something positive. Yeah, so it was like a intuitive, um, very rudimentary alchemy that I used to do until more more painful and more pressure based experience started coming in my life, that I had to figure out the big guns and meet the 0 point because I wasn't able to process that anymore without it. And so you may say, like, wait a second, isn't there one more stage? And to that one person who knows about it, I say, yes, there is. This stage is called Rubedo, and that's what people call, or in alchemy traditions, they call it reddening. And this is where, well, this is where it all stabilizes. And the reddening is called because it comes to you in the form of matter, redshift. And that is your manifestation. And that's your goal. You know what that goal is the fulfillment of your soul desire. That's gold. And you get that gold from lead to gold, right? That's what people say in alchemy. What does that mean? That means you took these incorrect ego structures, that matter that's not supposed to be there. You alchemized it. You projected that light, that's whitening, albedo, and that light is now solidifying in form, in matter. So when that comes to you, oh, sorry, I had to execute a mosquito. That's right, the law of the jungle. Shit. All right, are you good? Are you gonna fall again, or are you stable? All right, just be stable, okay? After all, we're talking about something that's very stable. And that's gold, guys. That's what this is like. All this, like, oh, they were turning lead into gold for real. No, they weren't telling their lead gold into. They just manifesting the shit out of it. And one of the people don't talk about it, but one of the most awesome alchemists was Da Vinci, because look how all this shit that he created. Um, by the way, like, he was ahead of his time because he managed to construct an like sustainable village, and nobody knows where he got the fucking financing from, but wherever he got it from, alchemy was involved. Okay. um and there's many more. I think you can figure out who else was the alchemist. And there were a lot of false light luciferian motherfuckers who could not touch the alchemy with the 10-foot pole because they're just too much of a pussies, but they would try to be, anyway, the dark side. And which by the way, fueled Da Vinci's invention. The fuckers around him who were like copying him and trying to imitate him fueled his like ever increasing uh, genius. All right, and so that's gold. And the philosopher's stone is a diamond, and that diamond takes the lead and turns it into gold. Okay, and that's reddening. It comes to you in matter. Isn't it awesome? And it's all can be explained with this little torus field model that has all these colors, right? It's so simple. another thing that people say, or uh, all is atom, all is atom, or all is the store's field. Everything, you are it. And the paradox is that, for example, you can say that, wait a second, so if the neutron star is the center of the galaxy, am I not the center of my galaxy? Yes, you are the center of your galaxy if you're an alchemist and if you are living in this natural process. Okay? Then everything revolves around you. You see, the ego thinks that everything revolves around you. But when you start dissolving the ego, everything starts actually revolving around you. Mm, isn't it cool? Because I mean, why shouldn't it? Because if it is a simulation reality, there's a lot of like, you cannot disprove this fact that everything that you ever going to experience is going to be you, right? Even if you take someone else's experience, and who's going to be looking through that someone else's person's eyes, still going to be you. Isn't it messed up? This is why you can never be not you. No matter what kind of role you're playing, it's always you. And also, I can't be anybody else. It's always going to be me. How the fuck do you calculate that? You know? See that, like, isn't it messed up? And so this is why there is an actual solipsism, but when people talk about solipsism and when the people believe in solipsism and they think that's how the reality works, that's an illusion of solipsism. And so that's hallucination. That's not real. But there's also something that just is, and you don't have to believe in it because it just is, right? Because if you teach somebody like that, it's like, and you create a belief in somebody and say like, hey, you are the center of the galaxy, but they're not doing no alchemy. They are just going to inflate their ego even more, and yeah, see what I'm trying to say. It's not going to go in the right direction. And to finish this thing, this process that I'm talking about is called gnosis with a G. Gnosis. Um, why is it called gnosis or gnosis? Silent G, I suppose. It's because it that word that how to say that word is referring to this process, this alchemical process that I just described, and it always comes up with the new information from the light that is always perfect for every situation. Okay, isn't it cool? It comes out as perfect for every situation, and that information that is just solidifying from that light is gnosis. It's basically knowing from infinity, not from regurgitating the same information, but it's coming from the infinite. It's always fresh and it's always new, and you can never be ahead of it. So that's gnosis, and this is like every alchemist is receiving information through the process of gnosis, through that new formed light that you can't possibly know. It comes in as new all the time, always mysterious, always fresh, and it's always surprise. But it's always surprise for good. Or there's something more to alchemize, which is not a bad news, or something that you've already alchemized and it's coming to you as gold. Now, gnosis. You also may be familiar with this concept called hypnosis. And hypnosis is something that you are uh, using existing fragments to play with it. You're not going to get anything new through this process. You are just going to be playing what already is. So with through the hypnosis, or like for hypnosis, I consider like anybody, for example, who uses self-suggestion, affirmations, um, imagination that is induced through, through will and stuff like that. Everything that is falls under the scope of hypnosis. Interaction with other people, if it changes your state of consciousness, that is hypnosis. The hypnosis intrinsically is not bad. It just uh, is what is. It is playing with the energy that's already been discovered, with the information that's already been discovered, but it's not refreshing itself. Okay, so this is why gnosis is the creation, and hypnosis is play. Creating and playing is something I always say. This is what our fundamental desires is, to create and play, and the process of creation is lovemaking. Destroy, create, play. Destroy, create, play. Um. Uh, anyway, this sometimes this word destroy is being used in other contexts, but that's what it is. Okay. Um. Yeah, you can create through some form of act of lovemaking. You just can't. And alchemy feels, if it's done correctly, like lovemaking. It starts, like even for example in nature. There's one phenomena that I heard. I think Alan Watts was saying. So like, hey, swans in nature, they begin the mating ritual by fighting. Like meh. And then when that dies off, they start the lovemaking. So I don't know if it's a good or adequate analogy, but this is like what happens to you when you see something that, for example, negative. It begins with this Nigredo stage that is uncomfortable, and it's like, the destruction phase. But you got to go through it. See what I'm saying? Okay, maybe it's a very far analogy of what I'm describing, but it is a bit of like a mirroring fractal of what I'm describing. Okay. And in theory, actually, every argument, uh, every disagreement, something that doesn't fit, right? It's a form of foreplay. If you know that there is a foreplay, if you don't know that there is a foreplay, and you don't know that it's going to end up in lovemaking, then you go on another side, and that's conflict, war, and nonsense. You see, this is why I always say like life is not about like utopia, because that's boring, but it is about every time these uh, you know I don't know how you call it, these negative emotions arises. It's an opportunity to reconciliate, and there's always something awesome on the other side. um but you got, what I'm saying, like you got to want to live that way, and you may want to live that way for a little bit, and you may end up living that way for a little bit, but then it gets to the limit where you're like, oh, I don't want to go deeper than that. Because why? Is because we're not afraid of dying. um we're afraid of love. That's the biggest fear. If you conquer this fear, all the other fears fall into place. Because you can see, even in all my examples, it's like it's the resistance to being dissolved, to die, to what is that void is? Love. And so we're afraid of love because that's what happens when you dissolve your ego. Love happens. Okay? This is why, like, every real uh, love making act is a ego dissolution. And this is why, like, for example, you may see in like this matrix society, um, the last pe- the last thing that they would do is to make real love, because you have to dissolve your ego. And it's so important. The ego is so important because they build that now they're so split up between men and women. They're so split up, and I don't consider them like, you know, like it's a good example to see, but I don't consider them actually turned on, right? It's just an example of what happens if you go the other way. Um, some people call it non-player characters, and they're, from that perspective, they are like non-player characters indeed. Not saying that in any kind of demeaning or negative way. It's just the way it is. And they would go to such extremes as like replace it replace the connection with any kind of other means. And this is why, like, this metaverse, Facebook, fucking Instagram, and all this Zuckerverse bullshit is the drug, um, as a coping mechanism. And I know even right now people are using the AI girlfriends, AI fucking boyfriends, and all that shit to keep their ego and to avoid actual connection. And sex doesn't have, I have to say, distinguish something. Sex uh, does not sex is not necessarily does not necessarily um, ego dissolving. You see, sex is not necessarily ego dissolving. Lovemaking is, which can be lovemaking and sex. Um, and so sometimes you can keep your ego, and you see what I'm trying to say. Um, and that, but that sex is fucked up and bullshit. Just not worth it. Just not worth it. Luciferian, I suppose. Anyway, I don't want to expand on this too much. I think that's the end of the story. Okay. Albedo, Nigredo, Albedo, Rubedo. And then there's one in between, something we call the Citrinitas, like a yellowing stage, but we don't have to kind of go into this, really. I don't think so. I mean, if you want to get into this, um, that would be equated uh, to you dreaming up. When that light is that, when albedo is created, when that white light is created, Citrinitas would be, you are, sort of like that stage between the plasma and matter phase. That phase state is where you are dreaming it all up, like what that white light, what kind of form is going to take, and that usually the dream is the new dream that you want to create in your life, and it's not induced through willpower. It's just, it's almost like suggested by your own consciousness based on that feeling that you have. It's almost like the movie is being fed to you. This is why, for example, if you have lucid dreams, don't make me pull out my big guns. I was going to say, you won't like me when I'm angry. Anyway, remind me, what was I talking about? What was I talking about, man? Ah, yeah, Citrinitas, that phase. It's being suggested to you. If you ever had a lucid dream, right? In a lucid dream, you may have like a general intent or like the feeling that you have. And from that feeling, the scenario is being created for you. You don't have to micromanage and say like, I want this to be this and I want this to be this. It's like from that feeling that you bring out in your lucid dream, that intent, boom, scenario is being created. And so that's why lucid dreams are like that. You're lucid in the dream. You can experience whatever you want, but you are not micromanaging it. You say like, hey, I want to feel what it's like to be flying, and you're flying, and then you're not micromanaging. The environment is being created for you, and whatever you want to experience, right? But the flying sense is freedom, and that state of conscious freedom. And you say like, I want to feel free, and then the environment is being generated for you, and that takes the form of flying, as an example. And there's more of these uh, examples. But anyway, the message of the story is that it's not induced through the willpower, because if you have to induce through the willpower that what you want, you're not going from the feeling, and therefore you're doing a form of black magic. You're not. You're basically saying, right, I feel bad. I want to manifest this thing to fix this thing that's feeling bad. You're skipping that step of alchemy, right? And so don't skip the step of alchemy. I know, like this is what I'm telling you is not what everybody's. Anyway, forget about everybody, but I'm saying that that's, I'm 100% sure. And there's a proof in the universe and in physics, and there's all around to show you that this process is happening naturally, and then that it's not. Another thing I want to say, that if what I'm saying is true, which it is, then you're not dependent on anybody for this process and create whatever you want in your life. What does that mean? That means that anybody who tries to organize spirit is a form of um, fucked upness. It's not. It's not it. Okay, it's just not it. And this is why any religious organization, or if spiritual organization, if there's a spiritual organization, it's a cult. You cannot organize spirit. So why should there be? I mean, there could be a scientific database about metaphysics when anybody can access, but it's not a group, it's not organizations, it's not a Kool-Aid, you know, drinking monkeys. It's not it. This is why I do not subscribe to this idea of uh, hierarchies and gatekeeping kind of thing, right? Even though there is a spiritual hierarchy, but the thing is that the higher you are in a spiritual hierarchy, the more responsibility you have, and therefore the more responsibility you have, the less of a asshole you can allow yourself to be. You can trick all these people into following you, giving you money, when you know that you're not selling anything of value, and that they have everything what they need themselves. You got to figure out another business that creates a tangible value and not fucking people over, right? And so then anybody with the consciousness and the soul would not do this. And I don't know, like if you notice all of these gurus, if you if you would strip away the status in the guru, and if you meet these motherfuckers in some dark alley, you know, you better know martial arts, man, because they don't look like they're on your side. They're like friendly and stuff like that. They talk nicely and everything, but motherfuckers have. Okay, I'm just now digressing. Anyway, all right. I think we're done here. Anything else? Yeah, I was talking about hypnosis and hypnosis, and I'm saying that hypnosis is not necessarily bad. It's a bit of like a double-edged sword, and it's fun to play with, but you play it knowing that it doesn't replace gnosis. Okay, it's just like a toy. And some people go all the way in gnosis and they don't bother like playing around with their mind, and because they say like, what's the point? Everything's gonna be imperfect. But no, there is a point. There is a point. Um, and it's fun. As per it is, you do it for fun, but you're not doing it to fix your life or anything like that. It's fun to explore your mind. That's what you do it for. Because it's everywhere in life. Like even if like uh, in communication with people, if you're effectively communicating something, you are doing certain form of hypnosis. By the way, like you can ask like, what can hypnosis bring you closer to gnosis? And the answer is, Um, it can, but if you take any suggestion as a hypnosis, then there are suggestions which do not uh, induce any kind of states, but these suggestions, they uh, take away the regular function of the mind. For example, these questions, um, what are you without thoughts? Like, what are you without words? And um, if you can't describe yourself, what are you? There's many ways. There's many questions to do to say, but they're all like not um, they're not you know how to say, they're not to play with your mind. They are to actually uh, turn it off. But you can say there is a form of hypnosis that you can ask these questions to somebody, and somebody can actually, not being able to answer that question, falls into the state of stillness. Then we say, like, well, I feel something here, like this kind of pressure here. All right, like, okay, um, don't describe it. What are you if you can't describe it? And then it may say, there's this like heat thing that's going on. Fuck it, don't even describe that. And then you may end up just laughing, or whatever, and just feeling amazing. Um, that you just burned up some bullshit that was there, not allowing you to feel good yourself. And that's as most as uh, hypnosis can do. Hypnosis can bring you to this gate, right? But if a person doesn't want to, it wants to hold on to something, and it doesn't want to fall through this gate, through this portal, then nothing you can do. But if the person is really motivated, then usually a lot of people who are been exhausted through trying to find an answer, and they are motivated, and so they would do anything. And so then you bring them to the door, and they may choose to fall through it. But you can, through the hypnosis, you can bring them to the door, but they're not necessarily going to go through it. Okay. um and then also you can postulate that there are levels to it, and there's no level to the 0 point. It's just 0 point, you know actually. um but through my experience, I can kind of see that there's a degree of stillness that I can experience, and sometimes some degree of stillness is like this, and sometimes this degree of stillness is so intense that it's almost like everything is like bzzz, and that um that's the way I experience. I experience degree of stillness, and there's a bit of a lag. If I have an intent to go to the stillness and it's that 0 point, I don't have to close my eyes. I don't have to do anything. I can do it anywhere. Nobody has to. You know, you can even do it as you're talking to me, or whatever. It's just almost tuning to that stillness. And what I'm experiencing is a bit of like a lag. Um, but if I just stay with it, it gradually just goes back to that stillness. Okie dokie. And that's when, in that stillness, everything burns up. And not trying to pacify anything, and not trying to. You're just doing it right. That's all I'm trying to say. You're living life in the right direction. And in fact, the more negative feelings are there inside of you, the more to stillness uh, you ought to go. And you can do whatever you need to do in life, and move to that stillness. Once once you get it, once when you touch that and you realize, oh shit, that's the easiest thing in the world, because then it's just like it's just me being aware and not having any kind of intentional motion with my mind. Then it's like, oh, that's all it is. Yep, that's all it is. And that shit starts doing all sorts of magic. It appears to be so simple and basic and kind of not uh, anticlimactic, but it's really not. It's the most powerful thing ever. And it will do things to your consciousness. Okay? Anyway, it's 1 hour. Thanks for listening. If you still are here, you're my man or a woman. Fist bump. And I'll see you next one. Peace.